Hi, everyone. Welcome back to In the Abyss. I am Rob of the Actors Workshop. To finish off the week, I am going to stay with the theme that we had. We'll start with the music first, and we'll finish with a pretty good stack of movies. Yes, I had to leave movies out. So there's going to be movies that you're going to sit there and go, what about this? What about that? Which I think is great because I'm loving to see some of the suggestions and questions on the comment section. So because there was a pretty good list for 2017, I decided to cut a few out. So one of the themes I'm going to do with the music today is kind of connecting it, and I try to do this every episode, but I'm really going to try to connect it today on how we think about it from the terms of actors. You know, if I use a sports analogy, if I use a music analogy, if I use an art analogy, any kind of analogy, business, whatever it is, it's always connected to how can you use this in our business, right? And it does all connect and it all does go together. So that's what I'm going to try to do. The first one I'm going to talk about, and today I have four to show you, and three of them are these digipacks. I'm not a fan of them because they wear and tear pretty easy, so I have to be a little bit more ginger with them compared to like just the regular plastic jewel cases. So bear with me with this. This is Foo Fighters. And the reason I'm pointing out the Foo Fighters is I'm not a huge fan, but I have a lot of respect for Dave Grohl. I think he's a very talented musician and songwriter. You know, to be the drummer of Nirvana and then be a guitar player singer for his next band, Foo Fighters, is a pretty special talent. And he just seems like he enjoys what he does, and it reflects in his music. This one is called Concrete and Gold. I heard a couple songs and it was a little more rocky, not rocky, that's not the right word, but a little bit more hard rock than his normal Foo Fighters stuff. And so I bought it and checked it out, and I really do enjoy this album. I think it's pretty strong, and like I said, he's a good talent. And you know what? When you use the abilities and talent you have, you can be really successful. Creativity, taking risks. So pretty good album. And this is their most recent, I think. So if you haven't listened to it, you should give it a shot. The next one, Iced Earth, the band we've talked about quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of John Schaefer because he loves history. He writes a lot of music about history, and he writes songs about movies, right? We talked about Horror Show and all the songs were themed, and then we talked about Glorious Burden and they're all themed, right? Like all of these things he does, he connects together, and I just think he's a very creative talent who's very well educated, and it shows in his work. And two songs I wanted to point out on this album, Incorruptible is what I believe it's called, yep. Black Flag, which is singing about pirates, and we know Pirates of the Caribbean kind of rejuvenated pirate stories, etc. But the last song on here, Clear the Way, December 13th, 1862, which is about a Irish regiment clearing the way for a battle during the Civil War. Once again, a history lesson of a brigade that I didn't know existed during the Civil War. There's just so many, and to be able to write about that and put that in music is pretty strong, and it opens up with bagpipes, and it's just a really well done song, really good album. But I wanted to point out that song because it kind of ties into understanding, dealing, so you can be believable. And my students know exactly what I'm talking about, and he does it in music, we do it in movies. Next up, Mastodon, Emperor of the Sand. They're next in line of records we've talked about. They are the type of band who kind of just keeps evolving, and it sounds like them, but they change over time, and they keep kind of capitalizing on the success, but not selling out, right? In my opinion, they're not selling out. They're just, okay, here's kind of how we've progressed, and here's how we're growing, and we keep building and building and building. And if you think about great directors, right, and when they put a movie together, and the reason I'm tying directors with music right here is because directors are really the ones who put the movies together. And there's a great example of this. There's a Brian De Palma movie called Raising Cain, starring John Lithgow. And he had an idea of how he wanted to put that film together. but the studio wanted it to be more of a natural flow thriller. And so he edited it in a way to be a theatrical release. Well, on the Blu-ray, they released a theatrical release, but then they also released a director's cut, and the director's cut ends up being more of it ends up being a stronger film, and it's actually the same scenes. It's just edited in the order that he preferred it, where it doesn't have that natural flow, but it kind of has that kind of Hitchcock-esque, De Palma-esque type feel to it. And it's almost like, when you let outsiders kind of be able to dictate, and sometimes it comes down to money, right? If a studio wants it a certain way, you got to do what you got to do. But the point is that, when you are doing your stuff, you're evolving, but also keeping your style. So De Palma film is De Palma film, but he's always evolving. And it's interesting to see the two cuts of that film because of the vision versus the studio. So what I'm saying is that Mastodon understands, this is their vision, this is what they're doing, keeping within their sound and their style, but there's an evolution to it. And that's why I wanted to point, and this is a really good album. I like the last one better, but I do think this one is really, really good in its own right. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And if you want to check out a song off of this, listen to Show Yourself. All right. Number 1 for 2017 is Overkill, The Grinding Wheel. And you can actually see the grinding wheel in the cover with Charlie, who is their kind of mascot, like with Iron Maiden's Eddie, etc. That's who that is. But anyways, the reason I want to talk about Overkill is that they are a consistent band. Where they're different than Mastodon is they have their song or their style, and they push through with their songs and their way of doing things really consistent. You don't have a career since like 1983 and still putting out material now if you don't have a consistency. Now, does that mean they don't have the evolution or they don't have the change? Of course, there was albums in the 90s that had a little bit of a different sound, but they're more back to their roots now, and this kind of has that roots sound and feel to it. But once again, you're successful because of consistency. We talked about that in class. Artists are special, and they're special because they're able to do things that other people are not able to do, right? Whether that be an actor, musician, whatever, athletes, painters, whatever. What makes the great ones is consistency. What gives you longevity is consistency. And that's what we talk about with these bands. And this is just, a really strong album. This became my number 1 for 2017 because when I looked at my, plays, on iTunes, it lists that plays. The number of plays for each song on this album were a ton, which means I was listening to this album a lot in 2017. And I still listen to some of the songs and put them on my workout, mix and so on and so forth. But I really enjoyed this album, and it was shown by how many likes or how many listens. So the number 1 album for 2017, Overkill is The Grinding Wheel. All right, on the movie side, I'm going to actually start off with a comedy, Jumanji. I think this is a great movie. I think The Rock really knows who he is, and he is able to do that rock thing in his work. We've talked about it. Kevin Hart is hysterical. I think Jack Black is hit and miss. He's a hit in this. It's just a really funny movie, and I also love it because it's not like the first one. It's not like the original. They didn't try to do a remake. They did their own thing and called it Jumanji, and so it's unique, and I like that. All right, next up, we have a few remakes or reboots or whatever you want to call them. The first one is Universal's The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise. I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. I like this movie more than most people do. Universal was going to reboot their Universal Monsters, and they decided, instead of going in the order they originally did, which was Frankenstein and Dracula, etc., and and I don't know what it was. Both were 31, so I don't remember if Dracula or Frankenstein were first. I actually believe Dracula was, but anyways, they decided to go with the Mummy, and I think that was a bad decision because we already had the Brendan Fraser Mummies trilogy, the Mummy trilogy that he did, pretty fresh. So it would have probably been smart to do Frankenstein or Dracula first. Instead, they went with the Mummy, and they kind of lay hints as Russell Crowe is Dr. Jekyll. And then you see the skull of Dracula, and they lay hints of what's to come. Unfortunately, this didn't do as well as they thought, and they kind of scrapped the idea. And I'm kind of hoping that they decide to go back to it because those Universal originals stand on their own, and I don't think it would hurt to try to reboot it in a different way. And I thought they did a pretty good job with this film. Another reboot or remake, Kong Skull Island. I really like Tom Hiddleston. He does a really good job in this, and I'm a sucker for the Kong movies. I'm a sucker for the Universal monsters. So even though I'm not a fan of remakes and reboots and stuff like that, the last Kong was okay with Adrian Brody and Jack Black. I like this one a lot better. It's fun, but you got to watch the original, the black and white. I have that. It's awesome. And then the one in the 70s with Jessica Lange is also really strong. So there's different types of Kong movies through the years. But I thought this one was done well. All right. And finishing up with that line of thought is, War of Planet of the Apes, the third one of the trilogy of the new set. You get aspects of the last of the original Planet of the Apes in this, and a little bit in the last one as well, but really in this one, which was Battle for Planet of the Apes. But it's not a direct remake. It just gives you aspects of it, which I think is kind of cool, especially if you know those movies like I do. I think it's kind of cool. That's what kind of got me. I actually saw parts of this one first. I'm like, wow, I got to go revisit this because they're tying things in. They're doing their own original thing, but they're tying things in with the originals, which I think is kind of cool. And like I said, I talked about the other two. This one I think is the best of the three. I think it's really, really strong. And maybe that's because I do see more of a connection with the originals in this one than the other two. But I really like this movie. But it's another one where I'm a sucker to the franchise. Planet of the Apes, King Kong, the Universal Monsters. And so you start to see a theme. And I'm going to like those movies where maybe other people are watching them going, yeah, I didn't like those so much. I like the franchise. And so you sucker me in. That's just the way it is. Wonder Woman. I'm not a huge DC Comics fan when it comes to the movies. I just don't think those movies have been done really well. But this one was. This kind of reminded me of Captain America, the first one, where it kind of gives you the past in the war and how he evolved into Captain America, and Wonder Woman's kind of like that, where it goes back into the war, and she has this thing that it develops into Wonder Woman. So I just thought it was really well done. I thought it was shot well. I think she does a great job, and it was a pleasant surprise. And of all the DC Comics films, we talked about Suicide Squad yesterday. But I enjoy this one the best. I thought it was really, really a good movie. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. I don't like, a lot of the new Supermans, the Batmans, all that stuff. I've tried, I just can't do it. But this one was really good. Pleasant surprise. Michael Keaton, another one that we talk about a lot in these videos, really consistent in his work. American Assassin, great thriller. Action, adventure, shoot 'em up, right up my alley with these kinds of movies. And once again, I'm bringing these up because I don't know if people have heard of them or haven't yet checked them out. And what's cool is you guys give me some things on list and go, hey, have you seen this or did you happen to see this? And it makes me want to go do it. The problem is if you look at my rack behind me, I got a lot in the queue before I get to some of those. But, this is one that you definitely should put on your list and check out, especially if you're a Michael Keaton fan. Okay, another Tom Cruise movie, American Made, loosely based off a true story, but a fascinating story. This guy's an airline pilot who becomes a drug smuggler. It's a pretty damn good movie. I really enjoyed it. And I think Tom Cruise is great. I could have done without the accent a little bit, but overall, I think that the movie was really good. And you know, it could have been in its own way a Mission Impossible type film. And that's that formula we talk about on a consistent basis now, is that, you know, when they do what they do well, you know, you can do it in different ways and forms where it's a different, you know, for lack of a better term, character in a different movie, but it's still kind of the same kind of Tom Cruise movie, if you will. And this one, you know, we talked about The Mummy just a little bit ago. This one's better than The Mummy. This is an awesome movie. It's just really good. I enjoyed it a ton. All right, another remake, and I enjoyed the original, but I thought this one was really good. Murder on the Orient Express. You got Johnny Depp. You got Daisy Ridley, who, by the way, doesn't even look like Rey from Star Wars in it. You know, it took you a while to go, who is that? Oh yeah, my gosh, that's Daisy Ridley. And you have Kenan Brown, I believe is how you say it, Branagh, who plays Inspector Pinot, which is an Agatha. What is wrong with me right now? Agatha Christie novel character. I think he was in like 33 of her books. You know, this is the remake, and the one coming next is Death on the Nile, which was the next book after this. And if you've been watching my videos and you've been seeing them and kind of going through them, you know I'm a fan of movies on trains, and this is the next in a long line of movies that we've recently been pointing out, and I just think it was really well done. It's a really fun thriller. And even though I'd seen the original, I knew it, I kind of felt like I was watching this story new for the first time. So I'm really looking forward to part 2, Death on the Nile. I think he does a really good job. He represents the detective really well. It's a really good film. I would recommend watching the original as well and kind of seeing what you think. But like I said, I really enjoyed this film. Ryan Reynolds, Samuel Jackson, doing Ryan Reynolds and doing Samuel Jackson, Hitman's Bodyguard. It is a really good comedy thriller film. And when you have two people who really know who and what they are and they understand their niche, and you put them together and they do that niche in an action film, it turns out to be really good. I love this movie. Like I said, it has a little bit of everything. It has the action, the shoot 'em up, the thriller to it, but it also has some good fast comedy with their banter. And when you have the Samuel Jackson banter with the Ryan Reynolds banter, it just really makes for a really fun movie. And this one's great. And it's probably another one like American Assassin that you've probably never heard of, or if you have heard of it, you probably haven't checked it out yet. You need to. Along with Six Underground, that's on Netflix with Ryan Reynolds. That's another really good movie. All right, down to my last couple. Baby Driver. Whew, what a great movie. You know, the soundtrack, the music, where the guy's listening to it as he drives the getaway car for, you know, these criminals. Ansel does a good job, but for him, it's really about the concentration, the music, and the driving. He does a really good job of being that guy. Jamie Foxx, Kevin Spacey, I know he has his issues and stuff like that, but he's strong in the movie. And I'm not a big fan, but you got to give credit where credit's due. And then John Hamm, you know, first of all, I'm always going to be a John Hamm fan. He's a St. Louis Blues fan from St. Louis, so he's like me. So he's always going to be one of my favorites. But he is great as you know, the main guy in this, along with Baby. It's a great action movie. It is really good, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have already seen it. But if you haven't, you got to check it out. It's really good. All right, these two are interchangeable to me, but I'm going to go with Spider-Man: Homecoming for my runner-up. We talked about Tom Holland yesterday. He is terrific. You get Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in this one. He does a good job. He really understands the Robert Downey Jr. Persona, you know. Once he started doing Iron Man, he really brings that to everything he does. And then you have Michael Keaton. You know, we've talked about him earlier. really consistent, and he's a really good villain in this. And that scene when he kind of figures out who Spider-Man is, and Spider-Man kind of figures out who he is. It's kind of a neat thing in the car on the way to the prom. A really good fun movie, and I love the way they have done these Spider-Mans. They're really good. They're really entertaining. They have some good tongue in cheek with them. The casting's great. They're really good movies. But number one for 2017 is Logan. Two reasons why. Of the three Wolverine films, this one's the best. This could be a standalone film. This wouldn't even have to be connected to Wolverine or X-Men. It could be a standalone. It's really good. Hugh Jackman, we've talked about, as talented of any actor there is. And actually in 2017, he was in The Greatest Showman, which I did not show. And the reason I did not show it was I thought it was overrated. I thought there was too much singing and not enough movie. But a lot of people love it. My kids, my wife, they love it. Hugh Jackman is terrific in it. And my girl Rebecca Ferguson is in it, and she's terrific. So there's elements of that movie that are really strong, just not quite enough to make this list. But Hugh Jackman makes the list in this, and like I said, he's terrific. And what's really cool about this Blu-ray is they've also included a special, and I'll kind of show it to you here, black and white noir Logan film. And you know how I feel about noir films. I love them. So to be able to watch the Logan in color the way it was put out and then watch it as a noir is really cool. It totally works as a noir film. It's unbelievable. And it's pretty cool that they did that and they included that in here. And that's a big reason why I picked this for number one, because I love the way that it looks and the way that it comes across, and it makes the film different. You watch a different movie. So that's why I picked it. You know what? Baby Driver could have been number one. I love it. Like I said, Spider-Man Homecoming could have been number one. Love it. But when I sat down to do this film, it was all said and done. It was Logan for 2017, and then Overkill, The Grinding Wheel for the music side. So there you have it. We are down to 2 more episodes, 2018, 2019, and then I have another What Did I Miss, or What Else Have I Missed Again episode. So I think next week we're going to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So stay tuned for 2018, which will be Monday. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then.